Okay, we continue learning Kovetz Halachos Pesach. We're in the middle of the bedikah, and we're going to deal with the Zman, continuing the Zman. We started yesterday the Zman, which is at Tzitzik Chavim and later, and now we're going to talk about everything else around that Zman, which begins in Siv Ches over here on page 24. Says Shmuel, Noigin L'Yisrael Arvis Kodim Bedikah. The minig is Daven Meir first. Amnon Miyavshel L'Yisrael B'Sibur Kodim Bedikah. Lo Yisrael B'Yechidos. Ella Yivdoik Tchila. First do the bedikah, and then Daven Meir. So first of all, just to keep in mind the times, Shkia, let's say is 7:23, Seis is 8:05. So you want to do the bedikah by 8:05, so you can Daven Meir. I don't know, 10 minutes after Shkia, 20 minutes after Shkia, 25 minutes after Shkia, 7:45 about, and then you could do the bedikah. You could have Daven obviously from Shkia, but you have to be careful repeating Kriya Shema. The chiddush that he's saying over here is, what if you don't have a minyan? So he's saying you should not daven b'yechida. So if you look at Hara Yud, it's a very lengthy Hara that the Magen Avram quotes a Bach that someone should first do the bedikah and then daven. Says the Bach, Miyunir lead this Valtachila, should first daven, because we're worried maybe you're going to do the bedikah and you're going to forget the daven. Says the Bach. Then first do the bedikah. The kivan the dashbe lo yishigach. You're not gonna remember. Because we're more concerned now because you're not doing what you always do. So you always have a marv in your house. I'm at the end of the first paragraph of page 25. Mr. Bura seemingly baskins, daven, and then do the bedikah. It sounds like even b'yechidos. Why? Tadir v'sheina tadir kaidim. First comes the ma'ariv. So it sounds like the Mr. Bura is passing to daven b'yechidos. The Chanukah is a whole fight unto its own. I didn't get a chance to see if Shmuel Shtim's over here, but he basking don't daven. He's quoting Mr. Bura that says yes daven. The Shartzia in the comments, David Kamar, you can do whatever you want. He continues over here, and now he explains why we're paskening to do the bedikah first. To divrei hem, that old shmooze was only in Mishal Yisrael's Knesses, and then there's no other minyan. The Ramanav Shach Yisrael Yechidos. Then we have this need on if you should do Meir first or not. And that's what's before in the Devreim, etc. Avol. And here's really where he says our mitzios is what's dictating this psak. Bizmaninu. She's harbe minyanim la'arvis. V'kamishos val bizmano. Yachlos val arvis b'minyan achar kach. Das Meir v'Rabbi Shlita. Tebachol oifen ein levater al tfilas mitzibar. B'shvil, Mailas, Tadir, V'chulu. And also the Chshash, Chameitz, V'yishkach, we don't have that way. Why? Because we have so many minyanim and people are always going out, etc., etc. People down late at night. We don't have to be worried about this. And therefore, Paskins do the bedikah and then daven. Lamaisra Forshemer points that this was already discussed, this shaila of Tadir, whether that should win out. Ramesh has a tshuva about this. Viter. Sif Tes. Should you do Ma'ariv first to do the bedikah bizman? What does that mean? What happens if someone always davens Ma'ariv at Seis of Rabbeinu Tam? You're not going to be able to begin the bedikah until afterwards. So first of all, we learned yesterday that he said one who's makon Rabbeinu Tam does not have to wait until Rabbeinu Tam. So I thought, now that he's saying this, I would have thought, so do the bedikah first, and then daven afterwards. So I think first of all, the problem is that only comes if we're thinking that, the whole bedikah is 10 minutes. So start beforehand. Clearly, as we're seeing, the bedikah is not 10 minutes to be done, exactly, to be done properly. So Paskins Rav Shmuel, if you look, ein lahaktan as well, couldn't as manner ragil, should not daven first. You should not daven early, and then do the bedikah afterwards. In Ha'ara over here, Yud Aleph, he points out that He quotes an Aruch HaShulchan, etc. And about 8 lines down, he says, Kavanasai, shall take the Kovetz bedikah b'ayvish adech Kovetz tefillah tzidira. The bedikah shouldn't push off the tefillah b'chol layla l'chein. If you have both smacking you in front of you, Arvis comes first, kodim Kovetz bedikah, which is similar to what we said a moment ago about the Tadir Vard, because now they're both really right in front of you. In order to the bedikah bizman. However, he continues and he says, if you flip over the page, it says Ula Yachol in the second paragraph, maybe you're allowed to, not because you'll finish, like I said, but Kivan Shadayin Zman Tfilasai. Is that the Zman yet Pasha for you? And this is, he quotes a guy that says, so he says you could start. Now the guy says to stop. He doesn't say to stop, so I'm not sure about that Nikuda. But again, this is only going to be someone who's mamish makbid gomer, not to daven before it says dirabinu tam. Sif Yod very negeya. What are you allowed to do at the zman of the bedikah? Mishagia chati shah samul zman of bedikah. Alser ba'achila. Tahainu. What does it mean to eat? To wash your hands, have a k'zayis of bread, and make a maitzi, more than a k'zayis of mizaynis. And similarly, drinking more than a beya mashkin amashkir masura of intoxicating liquids. You're also not allowed to go to sleep within the half hour near the bedikah. Why? So within a half hour, we'll call it about 7:30. No real meals. Learning is coming up in one moment. Yud Aleph, Te'ima ba'alma. What about just a snack? Hainu ad kebeya paskistin. V'achilus peiros sharmacholim shis mashkin she'inim mishakrin. It's mutter even at the zman bedikah. Lechatchila, you should not delay the bedikah even a moment. But within that half hour, tima is going to be mutter. In Hara Tezvav over here, he concludes and he says, "May Rabbi Shlita Amar, Ta'aval Gav Shalchatchila ein nochain lahashas bedikah b'shiyah zmana." You should not wait. Ledina. And that's why, if you look very carefully the way he wrote this, he said, Me'ikar Adin, you're allowed to eat even at the Shas Bedikah. So at 8:04, you're Me'ikar Adin allowed to sit down and have a cookie and a cup of coffee. It's going to delay your Bedikah. Me'ikar Adin, it's mutter, because we baskin, Te'ima is mutter even at the Shas Bedikah. Avada, Lechatchila says, the Kovetz Halachos, ein lahashas bedikah v'shigiyah zmana, v'chatchila is not to delay it even for a moment, and therefore, if you want to have that coffee and snack, it should be done before the zman. We come to Sif Yud Beis, and the shaila is what happens with learning. Says the Kovetz Halachos, v'shigiyah zmana bedikah, once the zman comes, aser lilmoid ad sheyivdik, you're not allowed to learn. Mikol makom b'chatzi shah hasamuch lizman bedikah, within the half hour, that is mutter to learn within that half. That is mutter to learn within that half hour, just not at the zman of the bedikah itself. Now, what about, so that's halacha in Ha'ara Tazayin. He quotes the Shulchan Aruch, even if it is kavua lilmaid, you can't learn until you have the bedikah. Says Magen Avraham, those who say Dvar Halacha in shul after tefillah, that's allowed to say Mutar Larma Shir. The Davka Mishaloimid Bebeisei Aser, says the Magen Avraham. Why? Because you might not stop. If you're in shul, Yilich Labeisei. But near Ali says that was the Magen Avraham quote. That was the Magen Avraham. I think he's quoting Knesset Gedela. But near Ali, yeah. Davka Misha Aimer Divrei Halacha B'li Pilpul. Aval also lasting but pilpul afilu inu bebeisai to b'zev vadik lemigza demamamshich leishmaitza v'haraya. Any person who gets up and say they're speaking for a few minutes, come back 45 minutes later. It's the derech to be mamshich b'shmaitza. Unfortunately, v'asim nuye mitzvah sheyishkach achach mlivdak. You might forget to do the bedikah. So, as he's going to explain in a moment, to have like a stam short tvar halacha, that would be mutter, but a pilpul that's also even berabim. Says Yud Gimel. Let's say you started eating earlier. So again, this could be very relevant. It's a Sunday night. The time of the bedikah is about 8 o'clock. So you sat down to dinner not at 7:30, because you cannot sit down to a meal at 7:30. What happens if you sat down at 7 o'clock? When you're allowed to eat. You have to stop. Even though you started behafta, you can't say once you pop the fun, don't stop. You got to stop. We call Makaim, Yesh Le'Stabik, Imahani Bazah Amad Shomer. He's not sure if Hashem will work, whether a shomer is going to work. Lots and lots of read on the bottom over here. But the answer is one should stop their meal and do the bedikah. Good. Let's leave that for the moment. And let's continue with Sif Yud Dalid. Let's continue with Sif Yud Dalid. I'm looking. 1 second. I'm sorry. If you look at the very end of this massive page of footnotes, he ends off and he says, he quotes a Graz. That's Medayik from Lashon of the Elia Rabbah. Toloi ma'ani amod Hashem b'dikas Chameitz. Elo le'inyin limud. Aval ishar mi liloi mahani. That for Torah, Shemer works. The Aruch HaShulchan writes, the din lakim mishescham b'malacha be'heter, even the Shemer yachal lingmar inyin for malacha as well. So malacha and Torah will say there's a makayim to be makel, but for eating, it sounds pretty schwer. Sounds pretty schwer. If you want to know what Rav Shmuel's psak is, go the second very large paragraph, 4 lines to the end. He says, "Inyan dina." Amar Mei Rabbi Shita the Yeshleim, but Adam Mekilin Maker Adin Linin Tima V'Shiki is Man V'Dika and Mishum the Oilum Loi Asu Ala Chilu Malacha. Avnid the Dan Yeshleim the Plug V'Alsar Afilu Ali the Shaimer Kiv Shachayv lived with Chizal Leil Shechin Tzarch Ian Iman the Shaimer. That's why he's being very violent and he doesn't want to be makel even with a Shaimer. Sif Yudality continues Yeshleim Stavik and Machlum V'Shiki is Man V'Dika. He says we're misoping you let to learn once the Zman comes. Aidei Shiamid Shaimer Lahazkir. Livdaik v'sarachian, that he's going to remind you to do the bedikah. Sarachian, we already saw that the Graz was mekel. Lamaisa, again, Shmuel is very not forthcoming over here. At the end of this whole page, he concludes, Mary Rabbi Shita Amr Shish Lestabik, Vizad Seif Seif Shu, Loi made who adin doicha bedikah mitzchil salayla v'ulay b'chagam lo yitir aydei shem v'sarachian. He's not sure if this will work. V'shigam previyon this topic was Ayin Sham, Ayin Aruch HaShulchan, Lamaisa, Aruch HaShulchan was mekel. I guess I would say it's a market to be mekel. There's a little bit of a practical detail I just want to point out is this might not be right, but sometimes this might happen. What happens if family members aren't home and you're waiting for them? Now, yesh ladin if you should be waiting for them. You know, if the father's home and the wife's at home, the kids are not home. Not bashid, you have a zman. But let's say for whatever which reason someone dictates it a tzairach to wait, and now what are you gonna do when you wait? So now you want to sit down and learn. This is the Aruch HaShulchan is mekel for limud. There is a makayim to be mekel. All Rav Shmuel is bringing out is the paramount importance to start the bedikah bismanai. And I'm just saying, if you're not going to start anyway bismanai, then yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. It says Sif Tezvav. Let's just finish up 2 small sifim over here. A little bit more about learning. Learning in shul b'li pilpul. Mishem tvar alach b'li pilpul achat tefillah b'esik knesses. Which I guess a classical case would be, you know, after Ma'ariv, the Rav wants to get up and like say over what to do at the bedikah. I guess that would be a classical case to be mekel. There's no pilpul. It's telling you what to do. Into Zayin, he says, what if you're in the middle of learning? You just want to finish the parak. He's willing to be mekel. You don't have to stop. And the simple reason is because you have an end point. The whole point over here is Shami Yishkach. What's interesting is in Yud Zayin, he says, what happens? You want to learn the Hilchas Bedikas Chametz. He says that you can't do because you have the regular Chashash Hashem Yimshach. Now, I was just saying the pilpul in shul, the short pilpul, which you have the Magen Avram that's being mekel without the pilpul to get up and give a short Dvar Halacha, a shir kavua, that could be mekel like that. To sit down and learn, we see this Gans Halachas here, you shouldn't do. And Chav Beis, Rav Dinil Asher says, he asked Rav Shmuel, but what do you mean? We know that you're allowed to learn Parak B'Mem Alikin on Shabbos. And we're not worried, Shemayata, with the candle, because you're learning Parak B'Mem Alikin. So why are you worried here, Shemi Yishkach, if you're learning about the bedikah? So what's the teretz? What's the teretz? No. Basically, when it comes to Shabbos, the whole Varda Shemiyata, you're learning about Shemiyata, you're not going to be Yata. Here the Chash is what? You might dive in and you might just get involved in learning, and that is not going to be stopped because you're learning. And he ends, and this is a challenge for all our Sfarim searchers. Verisi kama sifri zmanenu, and with this we conclude. Sheviu behagodas agudas ezov. Hilchas bedikah Chameitz hitter zeis. That a god is makel to learn halachas bedikah Chameitz. V'yisagti es a sefer v'chipasti harbe v'loy matzasi klam mizeh. Says I looked, I tried, and l'maisa I couldn't find it, and therefore, well, it sounds like he couldn't find. He says v'yisagti es a sefer v'chipasti harbe. You know, he got it. Sounds like he got the sefer, but he couldn't find it. He's saying that's the halachas of what you do at the time of the bedikah.